Last time on This Week in Geek, Vegeta had his sights squarely upon Mike the Birdman Dodd. Can Maximum Nerdosity win against the Prince of All Saiyans? Find out at ThisWeekInGeek.net.
Who disrupts my coronation?
Everyone has been destroyed because of this freak. I won't allow it! These babies just saved this lame fest party!
You are listening to TWIG, otherwise known as the flagship of stupidity. I am your host, Mike the Birdman Dub, but I'm not alone as I go through the news, the weirdness that is, and of course, reviews, because that's what you've come to expect from us over the course of the last couple years. I am joined by my ever-lovable co-host in the city of Kitchener.
Alex, ever lovable unless you're some people who hate me on the internet.
Yeah, unless you say the wrong thing at the wrong time. But that's okay. Actually, I was just thinking, Kitchener's known for Oktoberfest, but does Kitchener have like a subtitle to its city, like the blank city or whatever?
Oh, it used to be Berlin, and they changed that real fast after World War One. Oktoberfest, I forget if there's a specific slogan for it. I know we're technically we're Silicon Valley North is what they call us.
Huh.
Because almost every tech company in the Tri-Cities here have their headquarters. Microsoft's headquarters for Canada is here. Google's headquarters for Canada is here. Actually, there's a couple. Shopify worldwide headquarters is here. They make all the websites for people that sell all their crap. There's a couple that we're looking here. We have an EA studio, a bunch of other stuff. There's literally like hundreds of tech companies. So we're Silicon Valley North, or the Tech Triangle they call us.
Good times. The only reason I thought to mention that is since I've now become a creature of Reddit, it has just become my life now. I noticed there was a video that was allegedly thought lost to the ages of the internet, but in the era of the interconnected webs, nothing is truly ever lost. And there's a video that features stop-motion Star Wars figures called Shit-Faced and Shitchener. And it's them singing about bars in Kitchener where they got shit-faced. And it's by this pop-punk group. I can't remember the name of it, but if you go on the Kitchener subreddit, it's fairly high up on the page. So you should be able to find that with relative ease if you are so inclined. So as we most often do at the show, we typically talk about what we have been up to. And I myself, over the course of the past week, I've actually been doing like a lot of reading over the past couple of days. More specifically, we actually have an interview, which is going to be released on Wednesday, where I talked with Kate Wiswell, who's the author of Full Frontal Nerdity. We talked with her on Friday, and what was supposed to be a 10-minute interview turned out into a 45-minute long, deep dive discussion about love, relationships, friendships, how we interconnect with them, and it was surprisingly good. Really had a fun time with Kate, and I'm glad that I had a chance to connect with her. I also had a chance to read a bunch of comic books on the weekend simply because I couldn't sleep. So I was like, well, got nothing else going on in my life, so I might as well do that. So this past weekend, I decided to read Ninja Turtles Ghostbusters, which came out a couple of years ago. I read Ghostbusters 101, which crosses over the 2016 universe with the original Ghostbusters. I read RoboCop Citizen's Arrest, RoboCop Dead or Alive, Star Trek Alien Spotlight, Borg, which was arguably one of the stupidest goddamn things I've ever read in my life. It was just a bad fucking comic. And then what else did I do? Watched a bunch of movies. I watched a couple of different canon films. I'm working my way through the American Ninjas now, just because I have this thing for Michael Dudikoff, because I heard his name in a documentary once, and I just heard he was the American Ninja guy.
Next time I come by, I'll have to give you my DVDs to watch of Cobra, his TV show from the 90s.
Oh.
It's not, it might sound by name, but it's not related to
the Stallone movie.
No. But he is a cop that helps people week to week. It's one of those standard 80s, 90s vigilante helps people for a secret agency shows.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy who runs his secret agency is Principal Strickland from Back to the Future.
Nice. Actually, speaking of that, me and Alex were kind of brainstorming over the weekend, and for TWIG content here in 2020, since we are still fairly early in the year, still very much in the winter, not yet the spring. So maybe hope will spring eternal, and we'll bring you new podcasts later on in the year. Excuse me, I had the burp there. We are thinking about doing a film podcast, and not specifically here's what's in cinema, because everybody fucking does that. But we're looking about maybe doing cult classic canon cinema, more specifically stuff from the canon release group that was very popular in the early 80s through the 90s. So like direct to video type stuff.
Basically their theatrical run movies from the like all the 80s and then like 91, 92. And then I discussed maybe doing some when they fell apart, some other companies splintered and sort of took up the slack. PM Entertainment Group was probably one of the bigger ones to pick up a lot of their projects. And, you know, so basically some of these things that you might have heard of or seen on the video shelf from 1980 to like 96 or so.
Yes.
Before the modern day of when direct-to-video really started to fall apart when DVDs started coming out in the late 90s.
Yeah, so we're kind of talking about that. There's a great canon documentary, which I can't remember the name of, but I think its subtitle is The Unbelievable Story of Canon. I know a canon movie everybody has seen.
I believe it's Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah. Everybody has heard of the Breakin' movies. Everybody has heard of RoboCop. That was Orion Pictures, but I think it was Canon also. Didn't they release not Footloose, but Dirty Dancing? Or was that Vestron? That was Vestron.
They did Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo, Rappin' with Mario Van Peebles, which was actually Breakin' 3. I think they did another one after that. They did a lot of not knockoffs. Like they weren't the Asylum. Like the Asylum is, you know, now they make all the mockbusters. This wasn't that. They didn't make movies that mocked them. They tried to just capitalize on something that was already a hit. Occasionally making their own, but like their own hits, trendsetters. Their probably claim to fame to most people,
Delta Force,
is the fact that they basically released 90% of Chuck Norris movies from like 1982 or 83 onward to like 95 when he became Walker Texas Ranger. So that, and the other thing is they somehow secured the DC license for Superman and the Superman property. So they're the ones that did Superman 4.
Wow.
And Superman 4, I don't know if they did Supergirl. I think they had production rights on that. That might have still been Warner. But Superman 4 is what basically tanked the company. They put money in and it didn't work. And they also had the rights to make the Spider-Man movie with James Cameron back in the day.
So that's a project we're talking about. We're also talking about doing a comic book podcast, but we're looking into just how much of that we can realistically cover. But that may be only a once a month podcast, because I don't read a lot of comics, but I'm reading more now. But obviously comics come down to cost, because a lot of publishers, they're willing to give you press releases, which is cool. I get comics from one company, Dynamite. I've just never really taken them up on the offer, so maybe I will.
And I get offers for review pre-releases for everything from Valiant. We just haven't had a spot to accept it and put them in.
Yeah, so that may be something we're working towards. So maybe by the spring, as I said, hope will spring eternal, we'll do something new. Alex, what have you been up to over the course of the last week?
Other than the TWIG stuff like that, I was Frankensteining a bunch of computers, as you know.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, we've sort of gone through our spring cleaning early and tried to, see, what was dead, what works, what needs to be polished, what needed to be raised from the dead, what needed to be Frankenstein together. Mix that with catching up on my reviews, because I've had a fair bit. And that's been pretty much it, because it's been sort of a slow, as far as life goes, but plenty to do as far as TWIG goes.
Good times. So speaking of reviews on this show, we have a bunch of things up for you this week. We're going to be taking a look at a title that was released earlier this month from Warner Brothers Home Entertainment. We will be looking at Dr. Sleep, the director's cut on Blu-ray. We'll also be looking at a book from DK Publishing called Brave and Bold, Female DC Superheroes Take on the Universe, which a lot of these heroes, I think, are rather cool, especially after reading about them. And finally, Alex gives us a review of some of the recent Yakuza releases that have been done by Atlas and Sega, is it?
Yeah, it's a Sega released. The versions I have were the PlayStation 4.
So we'll be taking a look at that. And of course, you can expect the usual roundup of stupidity, including some late-breaking news, which broke this morning. We'll be talking about all that and more right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. I've been Mike the Birdman Dodd, joined with Alex the producer. We will be right back after this review of the Dr. Sleep Blu-ray. Hey guys, Mike the Birdman Dodd here, and we are looking at yet another release from Warner Brothers Home Entertainment. We are going to be talking about Dr. Sleep, and this is the sequel to the original 1980s Stanley Kubrick classic The Shining, which is set several decades later, featuring the surviving character Danny Torrance, who has been surviving his childhood trauma since his father pretty much tried to murder him and his mom, and he's been kind of dealing with the aftermath of that. So Dr. Sleep follows the story, like I said, several decades later, and it basically boils down to Danny gets called into action to help protect a young girl who has a shining power similar to his, if not way more powerful, from a group of psychic vampires known as the True Knot, who basically seek to steal the life force and steam, as they call it, from people who have shining abilities to help extend their lifespans into something rather unnatural. There's actually a character named Grandpa Flick, who has evidently seen empires rise and fall from the days of Rome to the current day. And I thought that was really neat, because you can only just imagine how many people this guy has killed over the course of his unnaturally long lifetime. The movie does take a really long time to get going. Like, I think the cut I watched, because this is the director's cut, is over 2.5 hours long, at least. So the movie really doesn't get going until about the first hour and change. A lot of the first hour is a lot of setup. In fact, I thought the first hour, frankly, sucked. But once you get past that, and it really kind of picks up, once they introduce the character of Abra Stone, who is the character who has the super shining power, it gets really, really, really interesting. And the character of Rosie the Hat and Crow Daddy are particularly cool as bad guys in this. Ewan McGregor plays Danny Torrance, otherwise he pretty much just goes by Dan. He's really good in this, although it's kind of hard not to see him as Obi-Wan Kenobi, and that's probably just a failing of my own as a critic. But no, he offered a really solid performance in this movie. In fact, this movie was really solid. Like I said, once you get past the first hour, it really picks up in pace. It really picks up in terms of quote-unquote action. And I wouldn't call the movie scary. There are a couple really brutal sequences which may trigger some people. Let's just say there's a point with a kid getting killed that's a little unnerving. They actually do talk about it in the special features. Speaking of special features, there are 3. There's one very briefly which features Stephen King himself saying that he approves of this adaptation as a sequel to the Kubrick film, which he's gone on record saying he's not a particularly huge fan of, though that may have changed over the years. He says he really liked how director Mike Flanagan approached this particular film and changed a few things to better suit the nature of being a direct sequel to the original 80s film. There's another one that kind of goes into the making of the movie, and then there's another one that talks about going back to the Overlook Hotel, which in the original novel, from what I understand, it took place at a campground as opposed to the hotel itself. So the special features, if anything, are the weakest part of this, because you look at other Stephen King releases in the last year with It Chapter 2 and Pet Sematary, and their special features were a little bit more extensive, if I recall correctly. But Dr. Sleep is a pretty solid movie, and I think a lot of people, pardon the pun, slept on it because its advertising was all over the place. And there weren't too many people, as far as I can understand from my circle of friends, asking for a sequel to a 40-year-old movie at this point. So, that being said, can I recommend Dr. Sleep? I absolutely think you should check this movie out at some point. Do I think it's worth owning? If you loved The Shining, this is a pretty cool follow-up to that. Is it on the level of Stanley Kubrick? No, because very few films are ever going to be. But it is worth watching. So maybe check this out on VOD if you can. But if you're a huge fan, then you can probably buy it and you won't be unsatisfied with your purchase.
News on the march!
Breaking news, eh? So, usually you hear Birdman starting this off, but I came across an article roughly an hour before recording that was released officially through Xbox. They're talking about the actual specs for the Xbox Series X. I was going to say Xbox One Series X, but that would be wrong. But would it be wrong? Because it's so confusing with the naming scheme, unfortunately. So, as reported previously, earlier, was it, did they talk about this before Christmas, or is it after Christmas that they started releasing some of the beginnings of the specs?
I think it was just after. I know it wasn't at the VGAs. I think they may have teased something, but I think the specs came out after Christmas, I think.
Yeah, so they had talked about, they talked about the CPU, how they were aiming for 12 teraflops. Here's the thing. This doesn't mean much to the average user. They see numbers and go, numbers, more's better. Not necessarily if you find more efficient ways of doing things. But anyway, regardless, they're saying that the CPU, based on pure synthetic numbers, like, not actually running a side-by-side test, is quite literally 2 times as powerful as the Xbox One X, which can already do 4K at 60 frames. But this is like going from playing medium settings 4K to ultra, right? Like that's how much of a jump we're going to see. It says it's 8 times faster and more powerful than the Xbox One that you have. Like the original first gen, not the Slim. They've specifically mentioned the original, because the Slim was like 10 or 15% faster, something like that. Now, it's also going to have variable rate shading. That's something they were already rumoring for quite some time. What that is right now, if you do anti-aliasing, you remember that where it like smooths out the lines on the edges of all your polygons?
Yeah.
This does it. That does it to every pixel on the screen. Variable rate shading determines what is most important to the viewer's eye and only does the shading on that part. So it's similar to effects that have been done with video editing for years, where it's like a perspective thing. If something's in the background that doesn't need to be shaded, it won't do it.
Okay.
Basically saving anywhere from 2 or 4 times the processing power. So even though it's 2 times faster than the Xbox One X, it could potentially do 4 times the graphics or more.
Yay!
Yeah, exactly. It's all synthetic numbers now. They also mentioned it has hardware accelerated DirectX ray tracing. So
that just makes light look pretty, doesn't it?
Light, and if it's through DirectX, it might also do the hair follicle. Like, however they had the hair effects on like The Witcher 3, that was something that was touted. That's something that can be turned on, and that can be greatly improved with ray tracing, because it basically, in hardware, without having to bottleneck the CPU, offloads a lot of the work of realistic lighting. So frame rate drops are less frequently going to happen. You're going to have much more realistic ambient lighting, fog, and like things that are in perspective look a little better. It makes things look less like a video game, more like real life.
Okay.
The interesting thing here that they said was quick resume for multiple games. What this means is, right now when you're playing a game, you press like the PlayStation or the Xbox, you press the home button, it'll pause what you're doing and you can come back to it after.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you open another program, it closes that program, right?
Yeah.
This would be, they didn't say the exact amount, but let's say you have 3 or 4 games on the go. Because they're using SSD technology, they can sort of, put a marker where the file is in use, and I'll jump into another game. It'll pause that game and leave a marker where it's supposed to start up from. And then when you come back to that game, instantly load, no load screen, you're right back where you were. As if you basically were playing 3 or 4 games in Windows and minimize the screen and just open the screen again.
Okay, I'm not thrilled, but that's neat, I guess.
It's a
sure.
feature that we won't necessarily use, but the way I could see you using it and the average user is they're playing a game that's really heavy on the graphics. They can then go, oh, I heard something cool is coming up on Twitch or YouTube. Open up that app. It minimizes and closes the game, thus offloading a lot of the CPU usage and all that, so you can just watch your video in 4K. And then you go, oh, that was a cool 20-minute video, or that Nintendo Direct was great. And then immediately open the game and get back to where you were.
Okay, yeah, I could see it being a neat quality of life thing, but
saving a few minutes at a time. That's a feature that I would personally want to turn off. Basically, anything that could be using resources in the system, I'd like to be able to turn off. And luckily, Microsoft has a bazillion options in the Xbox One already that you can turn these sorts of features or equivalencies off. So I could see that being something that we might not necessarily use, but it's cool to have. Mm-hmm. The other thing is they have something they're calling smart delivery. And what that means is if you buy a game now, especially any first-party title or any game that's going to be available on both. So let's say let's say you're not a Game Pass subscriber, but you buy a copy of...
say Halo or something?
Yeah, or even something like the new Gears of War game. You buy it, doesn't matter which system you buy it for. If you buy it or pre-order it for, or whatever game is coming out on the Xbox One Series X or the Xbox One X, they'll be priced the same, but it doesn't matter which one you buy. It'll be cross-buy for both systems, similar to what they did with the PS3 and PS4. Remember back when it first came out in the first couple of years?
Yep, and you got the cross-play on the Vita too, yeah.
Cross-play, but sometimes they did cross-buy but it was mostly for indie titles, right? Well, this is going to be for every title that's available on both. And let's say you buy it for the Xbox One now or pre-order it, and by the time the game comes out, the Xbox One Series X is out. And you're like, oh crap, I want to cancel it. Well, it doesn't matter. Once it's loaded to your account, it lets you download whatever version is relevant to your system. Which, I mean, it's already sort of what they do with PlayStation. It's just not been done on Xbox yet. So
yes.
They're basically announcing something that Sony has done for 6 years. But, pretending that it's a new thing.
It's all about that fancy wording and delivering that on-brand message.
Yeah, exactly. It was no mention that Sony does that, and I'm like, wait, Sony's done that for years. But again, good for them. They're doing that. The other thing is they did mention that the CPU for sure is their latest Zen 2 and RDNA 2 architectures, meaning it's based on the new video card technology that isn't even out yet. Like it's been announced and shown, but not out to the consumer. So they were probably heavily in development with AMD on it. What else was there? Quick resume, dynamic latency input. They're apparently going to be working with the controller technology to lower the latency of the wireless, Bluetooth and because they use like Wi-Fi for some of the older controllers on the Xbox One.
Yeah,
they're working with that to optimize the latency based on the games. So, for instance, because doing that sort of thing can also drain battery more. The more responsive the controller and wire, like the transmitter and the controller is, the faster it's going to drain the battery because it's in use more. So the idea will be games that require Twitch gameplay, like fighting games or COD and games like that. They're going to be adjusting the latency of the controller on the fly for whatever game you're booting, so that it optimizes for gameplay. So for instance, let's say they say, okay, you're going to get 10 hours of play on one charge for Call of Duty across the board. That's sort of the standard or whatever they're going to say. Well, you may, if you're playing a point-and-click adventure, get 20 hours out of the controller because it doesn't have to have the same latency. It can be a higher latency when it's not a game where there's any action. Or if you're not playing a game, let's say you're in the menu and you're just watching movies and you leave your controller on, it won't have to turn the controller off. Like, remember, that's how annoying that can be when you're watching something for, let's say, 20 minutes and you have to turn the controller back on just to use it. It won't have to do that because you'll get like 50 hours if it's not in use, which is interesting. It's something I've never seen done before, and I don't know if it's going to work, but it is something interesting. They also are throwing in HDMI 2.1 as the technology for the connectivity. Basically, it's going to allow 4K and 8K and 120 frames per second. They're future-proofing the console for the next 5-10 years, and that's about it. And they double down saying that they're going to have 4 generations of compatibility with gaming. They didn't say if they're going to allow disc support. So, like, doesn't necessarily mean you can pop in an Xbox disc, like an original one, and have it work. But they're saying that they're going to have support for the games in some way for every single game across all their platforms.
Well, as far as I understand, it's up to the individual publishers to make sure that it works.
Yeah, they're not saying they're all on there. They're saying there's support for all of them. So the underlying technology will be there to emulate the original Xbox. It just depends if they want to do it.
I'm hopeful that this means I'll be able to access a lot of my old Xbox Live arcade titles. I'm not optimistic about that because I'm pretty sure they're not going to devote any resources at Capcom to make sure I can play my MVC Origins collection anytime soon.
What this does mean for a lot of people, it'll be first-party titles that probably never got released in the backwards compatibility program where they had to basically make an emulator for every individual game, which is what they were previously doing. It sounds like the system is powerful enough that they can make a catch-all emulator that just works. And then it's so you'll put your game disc in, or likely it'll read the descriptor on the Xbox boot file, and it'll go, okay, this is a game that's verified that we can use, or it's one we can't. So it means that you're going to be able to play with like a lot of those weird games that have disappeared that people forgot about, like Brute Force or
Viva Pinata, which everybody's dying to play in 2020.
No, but the mech games.
Yeah, if I could play Mech Assault, which I don't know, considering the license is now with Piranha Games and Harebrained Schemes, that's interesting. I don't know.
That would mean that maybe you can't buy those games from the store.
But they might work.
But if you just have your disc, you paid for it, it's yours. It was released under the Microsoft Games banner. So
yeah,
they could allow you to play the game you legally own. It just means they can't sell you a new copy.
Well, guess we'll have to wait and see.
Basically, that's the whole story. They announced a whole bunch of stuff that was already sort of rumored and confirmed, but then the two things that I took away from that were the smart delivery that was new to them and the controller latency thing.
All right, so I guess we'll have to wait and find out more news from that as it develops. Still no word of pre-orders. So moving on to the world of entertainment. This is kind of exciting, though. Take this as rumor and speculation for right now because nothing has been confirmed. However, speaking to IGN at Disney Pixar's Onward world premiere, Tom Holland, that's right, everyone's favorite neighborhood Spider-Man, was asked if he ever played Dungeons & Dragons before. And while he never has, he did give fans of Earth's Mightiest Heroes a reason to cheer. I haven't, no, but Chris and I, presuming he means fucking Star-Lord there, have been talking about setting up an Avengers D&D session.
So sorry, what you're saying is you're just expecting that Hemsworth doesn't play?
I don't think he's in any of the celebrity games that I'm aware of.
I was going to say because you can't go by the whole he's so muscular and macho because we've got lifers Vin Diesel and what's his name?
I think it's Chris Pratt. That he's talking about,
Probably.
but I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, he does go on to say, which would be amazing. We actually want to film it because that would be really, really fun. Not live stream it because I don't do. Is this live? Is it live? Oh, okay. Now I'm really stressed.
Sorry. Do you know what would be good? Sorry, just before you finish, think about them all playing a session to promote something in character.
Yeah, considering
Like, you
Disney
could
and
lit-
Marvel would let them.
You could literally have Groot. You have Vin Diesel playing as Groot.
I would want Vin Diesel to be the game master if I had to pick.
As Groot.
No. Ultimately,
Like, I am Groot. I am Groot. I am Groot. But like, and they're like, but we can't go up against a gelatinous cube.
if they wanted to get the best synergy for the brand, team up with Dungeons and Dragons, so Wizards of the Coast, and if they wanted to do a new Marvel RPG, if you launched it using the D&D engine, which is possible, you just have to reskin it more or less and fix a few mechanics here and there, you could totally do it.
Do you know
And
what?
if you did it using the Critical Role people, like if you had Matt Mercer come out and do it, or once again, if, as you mentioned, get somebody who's already established, if you got Vin Diesel to DM it, I know Wesley Snipes is an avid D&D player, or was anyway, or Joe Manganiello.
Yeah, exactly. But think about this. I don't know if it'll be Wizards. Do you know who I could see them doing it for to promote?
Who?
I could see James Gunn working because now that he's working, eventually he's going to be working on
Guardians 3, right?
3. I could see them partnering Guardians with Paizo to do a Starfinder.
I don't think so, because
Nope.
they probably stick with someone like Hasbro, only because they would want the strength of that brand. Plus, Hasbro makes the Marvel toys anyway. So
you know what?
They probably want to
Thinking from a
synergize it.
parent company's scale. Yeah, that would make more sense. If Paizo was more also into not just making little figures, if they had partnerships with larger toy brands,
Which they don't really have any. Plus, one of the advantages, and I'm going to catch hands for this. Paizo and Starfinder and Pathfinder is a fantastic system. Do not get me wrong, but it is not as pick up and play easy as it is D&D 5th edition.
yeah.
Now, like I said, if you were to reskin the Marvel game, because the Marvel license has bounced around from TSR to there was a version by Margaret Weiss Productions, which was Marvel Heroic Role Playing a couple years ago. There was another version in between there. I can't remember who made that one.
Who does Mutants and Masterminds?
Masterminds, that is Green Ronin, and they're celebrating their 20th anniversary. And getting a license to an RPG is remarkably difficult. I have friends who work in the industry, and they've told me to get big properties, it's hard because you have to work with the license holder so closely.
So basically, now, the only companies doing big licenses right now are like Modiphius, right? And
they hold Fallout, Star Trek. There is an Elder Scrolls miniatures game, which would not surprise me if they expand that into a full-fledged Elder Scrolls game.
Expanse as well, or is that something else?
That is Green Ronin does that.
So there are a couple companies doing them. I think what would probably suit it, even though, like you said, it probably wouldn't work because of the size of the company. I think doing like Fate Core, like with Evil Hat, would suit like the actors better. They wouldn't have to roll the same. They would just be more of the acting, like improv.
I would agree with you there, but it'll likely come down to what will sell the most product. And if you put Marvel and D&D together, you're basically mixing, like, I don't know, strawberry lemonade. It's really friggin' delicious. They both taste great.
It also works well for marketing an RPG, like a video games and everything too, because D&D has that name recognition beyond anything.
Exactly. I mean, the other company, as we mentioned, Green Ronin, when they did their version of DC Superheroes, I can't remember what the game was called. I think it was just called DC Superheroes. When they ran their game, there were 4 books for it. I want to say there were 2 heroes and villains books, and then there was like the DM guide and the player's manual. And it was really well put together, which means you could support a Marvel line with Wizards of the Coast really, really easy. The problem is, when do you set it? If you set it entirely in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you've got some problems just because certain characters haven't been introduced yet. So there is the lore problem. But that's what I mean with setting certain properties up to be a tabletop role-playing game. It's a little more difficult than you might think. because for years I'd wondered why we don't have a Mass Effect game, for example.
Which sounds like something, Modifius would be perfect at. Or something now that they're sort of coming back out of being dormant, like Artel Saurian. Like they got the Witcher license and that's apparently selling well.
Well, I would give it back to the people who held the Dragon Age license and still hold it to my knowledge, and that's Green Ronin. But then again, it comes down to licensing, marketing, and lore. Like the problem with Mass Effect is the Shepard problem. When do you set it? Considering you now have properties and licenses that have come out since, which may contradict things, such as Andromeda. So,
the easy way to set that would be during the Turian War, like the very first time we made first contact.
Yeah, but that part of the lore is fleshed out, yet it's not. There have been several novels set during the First Contact War. I think the best suggestion for it would be after the first game, during the second, but before the third. So Shepard's in jail or dead. You don't have him
set it during Shepard's time where Shepard's being rebuilt.
Yeah, so
like that,
you don't have
that gives you about a year, right, or so.
So you don't have to worry about the Reapers. You have the Collectors, and you have near limitless options. But if you're a game master, you have that anyway. But still, so hopefully this Avengers game will happen at some point. Like I said, if they're smart, they'll take the brand synergy that they can build with a D&D Critical Role, for example, and make it happen. So hopefully we'll watch this on Twitch soon.
Because you know what? There's one last thing on that. What I could see happening, I don't necessarily see like a whole, like if this game, if they were to do it and it becomes successful and gets enough press, I couldn't see them necessarily making an all new like Marvel game. But I could see them making a D&D beginner's box like they did with the Stranger Things and the Rick and Morty.
Well, they'd have to reskin it just because certain rules aren't really compatible. But that's me breaking down nuance.
I could see them doing that as like a test run just to see as a Christmas, like, pre-order for Christmas sort of thing.
Yeah, or if they did it as like a Comic-Con exclusive, then yeah, it could definitely work out. Moving and keeping with the world of entertainment, this came as a bit of a shock to me. So as you guys know, NBC Peacock, which is still a horrible name for their streaming service, they're putting together a Saved by the Bell reboot. They're getting Mario Lopez, they're getting Elizabeth Berkley, but they're not including Lark Voorhees, who you may remember played Lisa Turtle back in the original series. And obviously they're not involving Dustin Diamond because that's a whole whack of crazy. They're not involving there. So she is claiming she was excluded from the upcoming reboot of the 90s sitcom. There was a clip she did on Dr. Oz last week reading an entry in her journal and tells the host how it made her feel to be left out of the series from the upcoming streaming platform. I have to admit, I did feel a bit slighted and hurt when I was not invited to be part of the Saved by the Bell reunion, as well as other cast members' events. Yet, of course, I also realized that having this puzzling disorder may have played a major part in this factual decision. According to her mother, who will appear on the talk show, Voorhees has bipolar disorder. Fans have become concerned for the actress's health following a disjointed interview she gave back in 2012. Speaking of her time on Saved by the Bell, Voorhees, 45, says she's truly thankful for having had the chance to work on a show that has been so successful. So yeah, like there was a sketch on Jimmy Kimmel where they got almost everybody back except for Lark Voorhees and Dustin Diamond. There's been spots over the years. There was a very famous Instagram post by Mario Lopez where it got everybody back together, though I don't see Dennis Haskins in that video, and that's the guy who played Mr. Belding.
Hasn't he gained like 300 pounds?
He's significantly heavier than what he was, but he does a lot of like celebrity golf tournaments.
Oh, and he doesn't look like, when I saw him, he doesn't look anything like he used to. Like it's not like just age, like it's dramatic. She, like, not just the bipolar, like I thought that they were speculating she had schizophrenia or something.
She's got some pretty serious mental health issues, and she has been treating it over the course of the last few years. but the damage may have been done to her reputation, which means she may not be considered reliable.
It's like the Amanda Bynes thing. All like you can tell, and it's not like trying to label or go, oh, that person's crazy or anything. You can tell by when you see even random pictures. If you look into somebody's eyes, you can tell when something's not quite right. And
yeah, I mean, if they're treating it,
she doesn't look like in any time that they've shown her, she in the last 15 years, she doesn't look well regardless of, because looks change face wise, but if you look into her eyes, she doesn't look like she's there in the room when she's talking.
So we'll have to wait and see what happens with her. I know they are getting Tiffany Amber Thiessen. They're going to try and bring her back. They're in negotiations with her, which, as far as I know, she's not doing a whole hell of a lot. But once again,
she went like Fastlane and then did like nothing for like 15
no,
years.
she did. She's done a bunch of TV shows. I think she was in Charmed or Beverly Hills 90210 or something. I don't know.
Something like that.
Something like that. So she has stayed working pretty consistently, but nothing super high
for the stabbing Christmas, right?
Yeah, he actually, I don't know. I know he's not in a good place. Plus, with the image he's cultivated around himself in the last 10 years, he's poison. And you don't want that news.
Show guy who did a Dirty Sanchez porn video and released it himself to try to get money, and then stabbed a person at Christmas at a bar. Probably not going to be right for the image they want.
Yeah, exactly. No. Moving on to some really weird news. This kind of came out of left field really, really late last week. Deadline is reporting that Eli Roth is set to direct a feature film that takes on 2K Publishing's first-person shooter franchise Borderlands for Lionsgate later on this year. Borderlands basically set in the distant future. You play a vault hunter traveling to the planet of Pandora. Basically, it's a looter shooter. The last one, Borderlands 3, was received pretty well. Was an exclusive to the Epic Game Store for a bit. I haven't played it. I hear it's okay. It's not as fun as the other ones, but it's got a lot more jokes to it.
I haven't played it. When we were looking at it, when they were sending out preview copies for people, I remember there was a bit of controversy because they were forcing people to log into specific accounts they created to give a streamlined experience, and that off-put a lot of people because they thought that they were being manipulated to only seeing certain aspects that they wanted you to see. But then when the game came out, it ended up having general, like, it's pretty good. It's not as good as 1 and 2, but it's still pretty good, which is good for something that had this long of time between sequels.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where I'll get to play it when I get to play it. We got a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked Borderlands 2. I just never got around to finishing the end game for it. Plus, I had all the DLC for it.
I broke the game really fast at the beginning of the game. Like, I leveled up like once, and then I leveled up again. And when I logged in, I was at basically max stats, and I was at the end of the game, and I don't know what happened. Like, basically, I fell off of something, and then I teleported when I respawned at the end of the game. I'm like, what?
Oh.
So I have no idea what happened for like 90% of the game. And I went, I'm not going to play this anymore. I'm not going to start over. But I played the first one and loved it.
I stockpiled all the golden keys you could get because Randy Pitchford used to give them out on Twitter like every Saturday. So I stockpiled a bunch and I'd save them till I leveled up to get a better gun. And if I remember on my old account, I should have like 30 of them or more.
It's going to be one of those games, I think, that when the next gen of consoles comes out, it'll be something that probably comes out on it and will drop to like $30, and then I'll be like, you know what? Let's play it on the new system.
Yeah. So kind of going into the story. So Avi Arad and Ari Arad are producing Borderlands through their Arad Productions banner, along with Eric Feig through his Picture Start. He shepherded the project and overseen development, including the latest draft of the screenplay by two-time Emmy-winning screenwriter Craig Mazin. Lionsgate, which has been developing this project since 2015. Executive producers are Randy Pitchford, executive producer for the Borderlands video game franchise and founder of Gearbox Software, and Strauss Zelnick, chairman and CEO of Take-Two Interactive. Roth said, I'm so excited to dive into the world of Borderlands. I could not be doing it with a better script, producing team, and studio. I have a long, successful history with Lionsgate. I feel like we have grown up together and that everything in my directing career has led to a project of this scale and ambition. I look forward to bringing my own energy, ideas, and vision to the wild, fun, and endlessly creative world of the game. Randy Pitchford and everyone at Gearbox has been incredibly supportive of my ideas. It really feels like the perfect storm of creators coming together. We are out to make a new classic, one of which the fans of the game will love, but also will find audiences globally. With Eli's vision and Craig's screenplay, we believe we have cracked the code on bringing the Antarctic, or the one that means anarchy. Sorry, I just can't pronounce it today.
Like
Anarchy. Anarchy.
Yes, exactly. Do that.
Yeah, Anarchy world of Borderlands to the big screen in a big way that will be fresh, compelling, and a cinematic event for moviegoers and fans of the game, since Lionsgate's Motion Picture Group president, Nathan Kahan. I'm incredibly proud we can bring this beloved video game to theaters for fans around the world. Eli and Craig, already accomplished and remarkable visionaries, will be amazing stewards of Gearbox innovative Borderlands characters and stories, said Pitchford. James Myers is overseeing the project on behalf of Lionsgate. MEU is overseeing the film for Arab Productions, and Lucy Kira will be the overseer for the project for Picture Start. Borderlands, okay, I see this more as an animated project.
It's going to have to be R-rated because this is Eli Roth, so they'll work in the loot. But also expect a lot of really cool practical gore effects. Probably a lot of penises being ripped off, because it seems to happen in almost every one of his films. As well as what else?
Excessive gunplay.
Yeah, like I'm almost expecting. Do you remember the movie Gamer?
Yeah,
the kind of bad movie Gamer, but it was the only not great thing that Neville Dean and Taylor did after doing Crank and like that kinetic movie. Think mixing that. Actually, you know what? It's probably going to be like that Guns Akimbo movie that's in theaters right now.
Yeah, that maybe with mixed a little bit of hardcore Henry.
Yeah, like I'm trying to think, who would he cast as some of these people? You have to have.
My guess is
you have to have Claptrap.
Yeah, well, if they're smart, which they won't be, they'd bring back the original Claptrap, because him and Randy Pitchford had a massive public falling out, and then Pitchford tried to sue him. And Claptrap's like, yeah, you laid your hands on me, dude. Fuck you. So that's not going to happen.
Oh God, I'm getting horrific visions of like, what if they're like, well, let's just cast somebody. I don't know. Let's get Peter Dinklage, like, because that would work just like it did in Destiny.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Although that being said, I love Dinklage as Ghost.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Well, then they completely erased him from it.
Yep. Now it's Troy Baker, I think.
Which they said it was over, it was because the fans didn't want it. No, it's because his contract expired and they had to pay him more money if they wanted to keep using him every time they re-released the version of the game. But they would probably cast. It would be somebody famous.
It'll be Ryan Reynolds,
probably.
Which is not a terrible choice. Or some comedian. Maybe Josh Gad. I'd be okay with Josh Gad.
It would have to be somebody with a similar style. Yeah, Josh Gad's not a bad idea. Yeah, not bad.
Olaf as a snippy, angry robot that swears at you. That would be pretty good, because I liked Josh Gad, especially after seeing Little Monsters we reviewed a couple weeks back. So hearing Olaf telling me to go fuck myself is amazing. And I'm totally up for it. So yeah, that's my pick for that. And it won't be any established characters from the game, if I had to guess. Although, if they were to do Handsome Jack as the bad guy, you need someone who has that swagger, but is also a little bit young. If you could have did Josh Brolin 10 years ago, he would have been great. So you need someone a little bit younger than that, if they did that. But it'll likely be a wholly original story.
Why don't they go with somebody like, make him, I guess, come out of his comfort zone? Somebody like a Liam Hemsworth.
I could see that.
Lester Hemsworth, but he needs something to shine, and he has the look. He could probably do it.
You just need them to be evil but charming. Plus, if they talk about the rainbow butt unicorn, I'm okay with it. I'm totally fine with it. Like I said, if this movie embraces its really stupid roots, it could be really fucking funny. Although I picture this more DC animated as opposed to live action, but we'll have to wait and see because everybody is saying, well, this will be the movie that breaks the video game curse. I think Detective Pikachu proved that. Sonic has proved that.
And Sonic is doing better than Detective Pikachu.
I think it came out, I think Sonic had the advantage of coming out at a really weird time, but I think Sonic appeals to a more general audience.
It doesn't look as dark from the trailers, so families are more easily able to take their kids to it. The other thing is, for whatever reason, Pokemon had, like Detective Pikachu, had a fair amount of people decrying it. They didn't want to go see it because it's like, to them it was like monsters and witchcraft or something, which is like they viewed it as like some sort of like, demonic pagan thing, even though it has nothing to do with that. And for whatever reason, Sonic's fine. Because I think it's because he's an hedgehog is based on a real animal, I guess, and that was okay to them.
Yeah, because he's an anthropomorphic alien from another dimension. So
versus little devil creatures or something. Whatever.
Strange. Whatever. Anyway, guys, we're going to take a break here on This Week in Geek, and we're going to take a dive into the world of video games, kind of staying with this trend, and we're going to take a look at Alex's review of the Yakuza series, which was recently released on the PlayStation 4. We'll be back right after this.
In the past, we've covered Yakuza Kiwami 1 and 2, which were the remastered remakes of the Yakuza 1 and 2 game on the PlayStation 4. And we were given the opportunity by Sega to check out the new remastered trilogy, which is 3, 4, and the newly remastered 5 as well in like one big package. Now, full disclosure, we haven't played 6 or 0. So we don't personally, I have not played the entire story yet, but I'm getting there eventually. I can say this about 3, 4, and 5. They're all remastered using a new engine that is similar across the entire franchise, which works out quite well because it means they can get these releases out more rapidly. It's a dramatic increase in quality from the original versions, and they've added a lot of quality of life improvements. Making sure that things run more smoothly, better audio direction, newly updated translation. For instance, the original games ran at 720p, 30 frames per second. Now they run at 1080p, 60 frames. So completely, new engine that runs smoother, better. There's been a completely new relocalization process done to it, so everything seems more realistic. In previous releases, they tried to get rid of a lot of Japanese-only terms or things we wouldn't get. Here we get them translated into a context we'd understand or explained to us, which is really good. So this is, now they have all, I guess technically 7 titles in the Dragon of Dojima story that you can play, and they're all fairly cheap. So you're looking at about $60 for this trilogy, and the other games are, for the most part, in the greatest hits, $10 sometimes when they're on sale, or sometimes even given away for free with PlayStation Plus. So for under $150 total, if you really wanted to go out there, you could get all 7 titles, and play them as much as you want until you get up to the release of Yakuza 7 coming later this year, which dramatically is going to change everything by being a turn-based RPG. So if you've played Yakuza Kiwami 1 and 2 on the PlayStation 4, you know what to expect with 3, 4, and 5 here, as far as the improvements in the gameplay and the engine and everything. So they work quite well. Now, as far as talking about the games themselves, they've been talked about at nauseum online by lots of different fanboys and fangirls. They're really well put together. They're sort of the logical evolution of what the Shenmue series was, mixed with a little action RPG and tons of mini games thrown in. I was a big fan of the studio that made these games. Also made the Fist of the North Star game that I played. What was it, year and a half ago, and it was actually one of my game of the years. And it's the same team, same sort of engine, so you're getting something solid out of this. The interesting thing I have to mention here it's not the easiest thing to download. And I'm only going to say that because when you purchase the collection, it downloads the third game, Yakuza 3. You then have to manually go to Yakuza 4 and Yakuza 5 in the store and add them to your cart after you've purchased the trilogy. It'll then zero them out to $0 and let you download them. Kind of weird, because I was kind of surprised. There was actually instructions for us. That is the way. It is kind of odd. It's sort of almost like a DLC thing. It's like they sort of expected initially if you pre-ordered it, what they did with this release, like way back, as each game came out remastered, you get a notification the game is out. Now you can go add it to your cart and download. So you prepaid up front and then you just added them to the cart. So now that it's all out, it's sort of a little backwards. You have to go back and download the other ones as well. So a little strange, but it is, once you've done it, it's pretty easy. It's actually in the store when you purchase it. It actually has instructions on what to do there. So you don't have to worry about that. They'll take up not too much space in your drive, but you are going to want to make sure you have room for them. Now, as far as, do you think we're going to see a collection of all these in the future of everything? It's possible, but I think for, $60 retail, you're getting, for $20 a piece, you're getting 3 new release games, all with plenty of hours of gameplay. Believe me, I've been working hard at this, trying to get this out. I think Yakuza is kind of the unsung hero of the PlayStation franchises right now. Like, people don't really talk a whole lot about it. I feel that with 7 coming, it might be the thing that tips the scales, because it has a very Persona 5-esque vibe to it from what I've seen. So I think now is the time to hop on. You can get 0, I think, is still a little bit pricier, which is, the prequel story. But you can get Kiwami 1 and 2 for like $10-$20 max. You can get this trilogy of games for $60. And then from there, you can get Yakuza 6. Probably, if you do it right, you can make it out for less than $100, which is a pretty sweet deal to me. I'm going to put links in the description for this, but it's really probably one of the best collections I've seen, especially for a collection of new to the platform releases. I hope that Sony goes in the future and works with Sega to get more of these kind of releases out and more remasters and trilogies of their previous titles, because this was a series that had not done well in the past here, and they've really, really, in the last 2 to 3 years, done a push to get the series moving, and it looks like it's starting to pay off.
What makes you qualified to be a reporter? I'm willing to violate anyone's privacy for my personal gain and then claim with a straight face that the public has a right to know.
By the hand of Zeus, what manner of deviltry is this?
I love fake alien poop day.
Well, from the world of criminal syndicates run in Japan to the strange, bizarre goings-on in this place we call Earth. Sometimes it's home, sometimes it's not. Sometimes we like to travel in a little blue box across the universe. This is the weird news. And of course, well, we're going to start things off in one of my favorite states in the world and home of Geekcast Radio Network host Steve Megatron Phillips. So we're going to go to Colorado. So evidently, police officers working the overnight shift were dispatched to a fast food restaurant after workers called with concerns about hearing mysterious and unsettling sounds. The weird call reportedly came into the Pueblo Police Department from a McDonald's in the city around 3:30 a.m. last Thursday, in what one imagines was an unsettling experience at that lonely late-night hour. Employees at the establishment claimed they heard a woman screaming and making demonic sounds. Specifically, Captain Tom Rummel recounted in a tweet later that morning, the workers said that this unseen individual was speaking in a strange language and barking. According to the law enforcement officer, the incident was so unnerving to the crew at the restaurant, they said they wouldn't be going back outside their building until the sun came up. Unfortunately, when police arrived on the scene, the source of the sounds, were nowhere to be found. That's pretty fucked up. Just to hear strange demonic sounds, whether this person is high on drugs is, well, it's Colorado, so it's not totally to discount that possibility, unfortunately.
Did you say potability?
Potability, yes. Sorry, I didn't mean to make that pun. Yeah, it's not unlikely. I'm not going to chalk this up to supernatural. This could just be a strange person in a strange place.
People forget something, too. We have more radio waves that we can't hear in transmissions on different bandwidths now than ever in history. It could literally be like people used to pick up radio on their fillings. Remember that back in the day? They'd hear it vibrating into their head. Or sometimes you had heavy glasses that had like completely metal bands out going around your ear. You could pick up the radio or occasionally like police chatter. How do we know you just literally didn't? And a lot of things are transmitted purely digital now. So when you get it, it'll just be like, it wouldn't be like real audio you hear until it's decoded. But it could literally be somebody picked up the radio or picked up a television or picked up something with an analog broadcast.
Well, the fact that several people heard of it kind of makes me discount that possibility.
Yeah, that's true. I guess it could have been something reverberating off the building.
My guess is it was a person high on drugs who came in and the cops were like, okay, that's pretty weird. We'll check it out when we get a chance. Like I said, the odds of actual demonic activity, I'm going to chalk this one up to relatively low because the odds are they're in Scotland eating at a vegan restaurant with Kanye West, as we covered last week.
You see, that's the thing. That I guess, they didn't get the memo. They were all at that meeting. I mean, they had, sandwich foods and pastries and desserts?
Yeah, they could have went to this McDonald's, and since England is 5 hours ahead, it would have been 8:30 in the morning. So they could have an egg McMuffin.
Don't forget, for them, it would be 6 hours ahead.
Yeah, that's right, because of the time zone difference. So anyway, sticking with the really bizarre McDonald's trend, as I've mentioned previously on the show, I'm on this huge liquid diet, and smells are a big part of things that make this diet a little bit harder than it probably should be, like smelling Blair cooking roast beef or smelling chicken or pasta sauce. Smells play a very big part in the olfactory senses. So someone got the bright idea that you can buy a 6-pack of candles that smell like McDonald's. So according to this website, they're gonna feature a 6-pack featuring the smells of 100% fresh beef, ketchup, pickle, cheese, onion, and sesame seed bun. So you essentially have a quarter pounder. So this is a part of the Quarter Pounder fan club. The website listing says the candles are coming soon, said McDonald's in a statement, indicating the candles are extremely limited. No price yet. If you love Quarter Pounders but are not in a constant lingering aroma, the fan club site offers a locket with images of the burger and a Quarter Pounder calendar. I'd be more inclined to buy the calendar.
You know what? So all these ones that you announced, and they're missing the only one that matters. Something that makes
Big Mac?
No, something that makes it smell like the apple pie turnovers.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I mean,
that would be an actual candle smell.
I'm actually looking at the Quarter Pounder Club website. You can order right now. You can order a locket, which is actually kind of nice, but it's sold out. The Quarter Pounder calendar's $25.
Okay, but let's be honest here. Locket and jewelry, you have to be a real trash person to think that that's a good gift for your significant other.
It's more of
it's like
a
here,
funny gift.
Here, Mr. or Miss Piggy, here's your McDonald's branded necklace. Or I got you a wedding ring with the shape of the arches on it. Like, really? Like, if you're doing that, it's a serious thing. You need to get your head checked. If it's a joke thing, it's kind of a waste of money.
Looking at their apparel, their Happy Meal t-shirt's kind of cute. It's just that bright, vibrant red with the smile. There's a beanie. There's French fry socks, which are kind of cute.
I would only buy one that says Happy Meal if it also had an arrow pointing down towards the crotch.
You're
just not going to react.
Nope, not reacting. You're on your own there, pal. I'm liking some of these though. This is under accessories. There's a Big Mac bag, which retails for $20 and actually looks kind of cool. There's a pin set, which is like two things of there's French fries, a Big Mac, and a Happy Meal. Those are rather nice. There's McDonald's hair ties, a Big Mac journal, which I get. There's a Happy Meal pop socket, which I don't get the big deal with those now. There's a McFlurry journal, fries journal, world famous fries tote bag. There's an umbrella that looks like the top of a Big Mac bun. So that's kind of weird.
Question: is there a Hamburglar hat and mask?
No, surprisingly not. I'm actually kind of surprised they don't offer like Happy Meal toys that are maybe of a higher standard. You know what I mean?
It would be nice if you could get some of the classics. Like the best line they ever did. Remember those pull car ones where it was like making a train? And they all connected together from the 90s. So it was like, and it was different things. So like whenever they had a toy, it would be like this week or this month or whatever is Looney Tunes. This month is something else. So you could have like every whatever movie was coming out or whatever kid's toy or whatever was coming out, they had one of those train cars and they used to connect, and that was one of the more collectible things. It'd be neat if they did reproductions of some of those classic lines there, or the original Happy Meal toys from the 80s where you basically the ones you'd wind up and then it would be a car that moves around or hops around or something.
If you told me that Sideshow Collectibles or Gentle Giant, so somebody who's a really good artist, like really good sculptors, limit the piece to 500, maybe 1,000 or less of the Happy Meal characters, Ronald McDonald or the Hamburglar, that might be something worth buying.
Well, here you want to know something that would sell instantly, and I mean instantly, and you would probably buy a bunch of them, especially if they did a whole series of them. You know how you seem to love those super squishy Squishable, whatever the hell they're called,
like Fry Kids like that.
No, Grimace. You know the size.
Yeah,
the size of your cat one that you have and you've shown off on Facebook, or the other. What's the new one? What's his name that you showed off? The big
Alexa.
One. Yes.
Yes.
Imagine one that big, but of a purple Grimace.
Yeah. If they did the Grimace and the Fry Kids, that'd be pretty cool, and they'd probably sell. I mean, just make them super limited edition, and people would probably buy it.
There'd be videos all over the internet of people punching it and retaking its shape and saying nothing can kill the Grimace.
See, there you go. So this week's final weird news story, it's going to end on kind of a downer, and it's unfortunate that this individual passed away, but if anybody was going to win the Darwin Award, it was going to be this guy. So
and before you say anything, there are a lot of people out there saying, "Oh, he got what he deserved." Nah, stop saying that stuff, because that's just cruel.
Don't be cruel.
But
don't be an asshole.
Let this be a lesson. There's going to be people that in this community that, or not our community, but the community this guy was in, that believe that it's all a conspiracy against him, and there's always going to be some reason to go kookier and crazier over this. But the reality is, this should be a warning to people that are not qualified to do what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to try something scientific, be a scientist or have a significant backup team who is. So anyway, a U.S. Daredevil pilot has been killed during an attempted launch of a homemade rocket in the California desert. Mad Mike Hughes, 64, crash landed his steam-powered rocket shortly after takeoff near Barstow on Saturday. A video on social media shows the rocket being fired into the sky before plummeting into the ground nearby. Hughes was well known for his belief that the Earth was flat. He'd hoped to prove his theory by going to space. Saturday's launch was reportedly filmed as part of Homemade Astronauts, a new TV series about amateur rocket makers to be aired on the U.S. Science Channel. The project had to be carried out on a tight budget. With the help of his partner, Walter Stakes, Hughes was trying to reach an altitude of 5,000 feet, or about 1,525 meters, while riding his steam-powered rocket, according to Space.com. In the video of the launch, a parachute can be seen trailing behind the rocket, apparently deployed too early, seconds after takeoff. In a tweet, the Science Channel said Hughes had died pursuing his dream. The tweet from the Science Channel reads as follows. Michael Mad Mike Hughes tragically passed away today during an attempted launch of his homemade rocket. Our thoughts and prayers go out to his family and friends during this difficult time. It was always his dream to do this launch, and the Science Channel was there to chronicle his journey. San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department had said officers were called to a rocket launch event around 1400 local time, so 2 o'clock on Saturday. The sheriff's office had said a man was pronounced deceased after the rocket crashed in the open desert. Hughes publicist confirmed to U.S. media outlets that it was the pilot who had been killed. Darren Schuster, a former representative of Hughes, told TMZ the Daredevil was one of a kind. When God made Mike, he broke the mold. The man was the real deal and lived to push the edge. He wouldn't have gone out any other way, R.I.P., he said. Mad Mike and his assistants built the homemade rocket in his backyard, spending around $18,000. The rocket used steam injection through a nozzle through propulsion. The Daredevil who lived in Apple Valley made headlines internationally when he announced his intention to prove his theory that the Earth was flat. In March of last year, Hughes managed an altitude of 1,870 feet or 570 meters before deploying his parachutes and landing with a bump. Speaking afterwards, Hughes said, "Am I glad I did it? Yeah, I guess. I'll feel it in the morning. I won't be able to get out of bed. At least I can go home and have dinner and see my cats tonight." He set a Guinness World Record in 2002 for the longest limousine jump over 31 meters, 103 feet in a Lincoln Town Car stretch limo. So that's unfortunate that this guy passed away, but it was a combination of factors because honestly, if his parachute deployed too early, that's mechanical failure.
I'll weigh in on this, and again, I'm not going to be rude or anything to him, but I will say this. I question if he was known for being a daredevil, how much of it was him believing that the Earth was flat, and how much of it was him capitalizing on that to further his daredevil career.
Probably a combination of both, because ambition knows no bounds.
Exactly, no shame. He might have been exploiting that community to get fame. Possible, we won't know now, obviously. The other thing is, he basically designed a 1800s style rocket, right? Like it's not just steampunk, it's like industrial revolution tech, which is interesting. But if I was his design partner that was mentioned earlier, his partner in building all that, I would be in therapy for the rest of my life, because he basically designed a death trap for him.
Like I said, this sounds more like mechanical failure.
Like, it's not his fault he died directly, but he designed a machine that clearly didn't work. And the last one thing I want to mention here is, this is why they don't test prototypes like this in
people
in the desert, unless you're NASA. They should have been testing this on a coastline and where he would have landed in the water.
Yeah, there could have been a lot more safety precautions taken. And obviously,
if they're like, he could have drowned or whatever, you could have had the Coast Guard ready, or you could have paid to have somebody there ready when he lands, or if it didn't go well. You land in the desert, it's like landing on cement.
Yeah, you're taking your life into your own hands. So our thoughts and prayers go out to his family. I think it's unfortunate that people were there filming this at the time. That footage will obviously never get out. And it shouldn't, because we shouldn't celebrate a man's death. So unfortunately, it is what it is. So rest in peace, Mad Mike Hughes. Well, you certainly made the world a more interesting place, to say the very least.
Yeah,
so
if anything we'll take from this, it's that literally steampunk is sort of alive in the maker-creator community.
Yeah. And the guy never said he never gave up on his dream, and that's certainly something, especially in this day and age. So we're going to close things out on hopefully a more cheery note. And we're going to take a look at another review here. This one coming to us from DK Publishing. And we're going to take a look at Brave and Bold, female DC superheroes take on the universe. We'll be back, guys, right after this with our closing thoughts right here on TWIG on ThisWeekInGeek.net. Hey guys, Mike the Birdman Dodd here, and I'm here with yet another book review. This one is coming to us from DK Publishing, and I'm talking about Brave and Bold, the female DC superheroes take on the universe. So this book is actually pretty neat. It's kind of like a character encyclopedia of some of the DC superheroes who happen to be really awesome kick-ass girls. And this includes a foreword by comic writer Gail Simone, who is quite popular on Twitter. She's written a lot of comics over the years. I know she has written stuff like Batgirl, Wonder Woman, and Birds of Prey. And if you follow her Twitter, she usually has a hot take on something, which is usually pretty interesting and generates like thousands of replies. She's pretty cool. So what this is, it gives you basically a bunch of different characters across the DC universe, but it also gives you a little bit of information on them. Basically, you get you get a piece of character art and a couple of paragraphs about their different powers and abilities, but it does break it down into different subcategories, sort of what their virtues might be, like compassionate, bold, curious, and persistent. Some examples of this might be, for compassionate, you might get Black Canary and Wonder Woman. Though I've never thought of Wonder Woman as particularly compassionate, especially because most of my knowledge of Wonder Woman comes from the DC animated movies, and she looks more like kick-ass warrior woman who will straight screw you up, as opposed to this bastion of compassion. But then again, that's the difference between the comics and the movies, right? It goes into the bold. It talks about Supergirl, talks about Huntress, talks about Katana, and I know her from the Suicide Squad. I didn't know she's a superhero now, so that's kind of cool. Also learn about Stargirl. I also learned a few things I didn't know about Zatanna, and specifically how her magic works, how she has to read her spells backwards. I will admittedly say that my knowledge of the DC superhero universe is not as strong as it should be. I've always been more of a Marvel guy, but it's kind of neat to know that. Some people who fall under curious is Barbara Gordon herself, Batgirl. They also talk about Lois Lane. They also talk about Power Girl, specifically the Tanya Spears incarnation. A lot of the characters here I didn't recognize, although I didn't know that Steel is now a girl. I had no idea. Now she has like a liquid metal powered suit, so that's kind of neat. Under Persistent, they have Kate Kane herself, or Batwoman. They also talk about Starfire, who's like a former Teen Titan, or I think is the leader of them now. They also talk about Power Girl, Supergirl from an alternate Earth, and Iris West from The Flash is another name you'll recognize. And then the book finally ends with Phantom Girl. So the book is about 122 pages, give or take. And the book will retail for about $21.99 Canadian. I do like this, as it is a nice slice of looking at the DC universe as a whole. If you want to focus on female superheroes, it's a nice way to get your kind of feet wet if you want to focus on that particular realm. It was cool learning about all these different heroes. If I did have any complaints, I do wish it was a little bit more fleshed out. I wish they'd give you some recommended reading. Like, say, if you want to check out some of these characters' essential stories, check out this, that, and the other thing. But overall, I'm going to say Brave and the Bold. If you're a big fan of female superheroes, or maybe if you're a parent and you want to give your son or daughter something kind of cool to say, hey, girls can kick ass too, check this out. So that is Brave and Bold from DK Publishing, and this gets a recommend from us here at This Week in Geek.
Hold that thought. It's crapper time.
And that has been the kind of show it has been here on This Week in Geek this past week. We've covered a lot of things, from Avengers, D&D, to new Xbox specs, to McDonald's scented candles, and the tragic passing of a Daredevil. Good show this week, though. Definitely good conversation. I didn't expect the RPG conversation to get so in-depth. Kind of nice talking about this. Still very much invested in the RPG space, which kind of brings me to some of the things I'll be reviewing next week. I just got review copies from Cubicle 7. I'll be looking at Warhammer role-playing dark fantasy, I think it's called. I'm not 100% sure of the title, but it's in its 4th edition, based on the vastly popular Warhammer franchise. And I've never really looked at it. All I know is people consider it grim dark fantasy, and I love me some grim dark.
So this is their role play, because I know the problem with Warhammer can be everybody assumes it's all the miniatures, but then I've read that there are separate lines that are just regular tabletop RPG pen and paper stuff. So that's what this is. This is a pen and paper one.
Yes.
Cool, because I've always been interested in the actual lore and fantasy, because it's like it's high fantasy sci-fi, like a amalgamation.
No. This is pure fantasy.
Sorry?
You're thinking Warhammer 40K.
Oh, okay. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So
I've always
I am
wondered
wrong.
that
So-
too.
So I will learn from you from what you-
Yeah, and this is a thick rule book, so I've got me some reading ahead of me this week. I'm also going to be looking at something related to the Assassin's Creed property next week as well, which I'm looking forward to covering that. What do we got coming up from you next week?
I'm gonna pull up. I've got a list of things that I've been working on. I have a couple Sega releases, Puyo Puyo 2 and Sonic 2, the Sega Ages releases. They just came out that I've been working on. Rune Factory 4 Special Edition on the Switch. Azure Lane Crosswave on the PS4. These are all going to be part of a Turd or Treasure episode. What else do we have here? A couple Criterion movies that I was looking at. We've got a bunch from Milk Creek. It's going to be probably a pretty packed week because I have been spending as much waking hours as possible catching up on everything, because we had the month where we had 2 weeks where we had almost nothing, so we were able to catch up on everything. And then I literally opened the door and the postal people had left 4 boxes at my door full of stuff.
So it's like Christmas again.
It's Christmas or birthday extends onward. So there's some neat stuff coming up. There's also looks like will be reviewing Romance of the Three Kingdoms 14 when that comes soon. There's also, I have Langrisser 1 and 2 remastered on the PlayStation 4. It's also available on the Switch. La Mulana 1 and 2 I'm working on. Under Night in Rebirth EXE, one of those crazy long Japanese 2D fighting games. Darksiders Genesis. What else here? That's a lot, and you've got probably more, because you always tell me about, you're like, I've got my book bin.
Yeah, I've got a couple more books. I think I have DC year by year, because my knowledge of DC has always been relatively light. So this will be a nice refresher course on the world. Plus, it is updated as of last year because it came out very late in the year. I'll also be looking at the Twilight Zone, which is the Jordan Peele series that was on YouTube last year, and they've released it now on Bluray. So I'll be talking about that. So I think it got a second season renewal, if I remember right. And the really cool thing, I just found this out, is you can watch the episodes in color, or if you want, there's a black and white version. So, cool. So yeah, that's kind of because I'm a big fan of the old school Twilight Zone stuff.
And
so,
is there going to be more? Is this week a Fools Who Ride episode, or are we back to regular nerd?
They are recording Sonic the Hedgehog tomorrow. I'm not a part of that record. I haven't got a chance to go out and see Sonic yet. It's just been too hard to get out my wheelchair. So I think this is a week off. Then next week will be Sonic. And then I think we're watching The Witcher. So I think I got to get on that damn soon. So yeah, I've got a lot to do in the next week.
There will be a Future Imperfect this week as we discuss the next 3 episodes in Picard, well as there was another topic we were going to talk about in there. And I believe in the following week, I think is it sort of going to be alternating? I believe we talked with Steve about that, where it's like sometimes it's going to be Future Imperfect, sometimes it's going to be Ultra Geek.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, as I've mentioned on the show, but if you listen to the Twig primary, we have a guest lined up for Future Imperfect. We're going to be talking with a writer who worked on the Star Trek role-playing game for Modiphius, and he's going to help share his thoughts on Star Trek Picard as the series ends in just a few weeks. So we'll be talking about that and a whole lot more. Like I said, we're going to put more shows into development.
Exactly. And the big thing this week is this Wednesday. So we're talking in a couple days. If you get this right away, we have your interview going up.
Yes, we will be talking with author Kate Wiswell. She's the author of Full Frontal Nerdy Lessons in Loving and Living with Your Brain, a book you should definitely pick up on Amazon, and I can't recommend it enough. It was a wonderful piece to help me do some introspection. So if you want to analyze your relationships and friendships according to the periodic table, you can do that. So anyway, until next time, we have been
Alex.
I've been Mike the Birdman Dodd. Say, live free or die hard. And as always, as my friend Jackie Bam Bam might say, be cool, be kind, be careful. We'll catch you guys again next time, right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
Well, that's our show. All right, here's the deal. Every time you watch my show, I will send you $40.
Checks will not be honored.
You've been listening to This Week in Geek, your source for guaranteed nonsense or your money back. Tune in next week for more info on the most important things you didn't need to know. Check out our website at ThisWeekInGeek.net and subscribe to our podcast through iTunes or any podcatcher. If you'd like to comment on this episode, head over to this episode's post at ThisWeekInGeek.net and leave a comment through Facebook Connect. Follow us on Twitter at ThisWeekInGeek.net and follow our Instagram at twig_official_podcast. Social media not your thing? Send us an email at feedback@ThisWeekInGeek.net. We'll see you next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
Just when you think this show is terrible, something wonderful happens.
What?
It ends.
I have to go. Somewhere there is a crime happening.